Business is more than grinding to get it done. It's people, process, and payroll done right. It's protecting your team, leveraging every penny out of every dollar to build and grow. From HR to insurance, from strategy to scale. We give you the playbook so you don't have to figure it out the hard way. This is the PEO Playbook, hosted by Chad Philly with Staff Brokers Inc. Get valuable insights and learn to grow your team without HR headaches. Let's get started.
All right, welcome back to the PEO Playbook podcast. I am Chad Philly with Staff Brokers, here today with CEO of Staff Brokers, Marty Gray. And we're going to get into some more of the nitty-gritty of PEO and how it helps small business owners focus on the things that they got into business to do instead of all the compliance-related things that go along with having employees. Today, we're going to kick it off and focus a little bit, starting with PEO and a piece of the work comp as far as pay-as-you-go work comp and how that simplifies things up for businesses instead of versus having their own standard market policy, and how some of the benefits and ways it can make life easier for those PEO clients.
Chad, this is a great topic to talk about because there's so many things that bring into it. I'm just thinking of job costing. We have employees or we have clients who, on a week-to-week basis, their employee might be doing one particular type of work comp experience. Let's say, an electrician. They're doing wiring in the house or whatever. And the next phase of that job might be the plumbing portion of it. Well, that same employee might be somebody who's doing that same work. And that's different exposure, different work comp rates. So it's important to have a PEO that you're working with that allows you to change the hours that you're working with that employee to different codes. Just breaks out the rates and the costs and things along those lines. But it brings in a deeper conversation of the audit. What happens later on in the traditional market? You go out and you buy your workers' compensation. You might even tell your agent that you need a plumbing code, an electrical code, and a carpentry code. But it's that employee or that employer's responsibility to have the paperwork that shows the hours that those employees worked in the multiple codes. And they may fail at doing that. They may just keep paying them. And then it comes audit time and they're like, well, what code were you paying these people in at what times? And that's where they get in trouble. And they'll promise you they always default to the highest code when the insurance companies are. They're going to say, if you can't tell me what code they were in, you're going to pay me the higher code. And with the PEO, you're going to be doing that job costing process of turning in the hours of the multiple codes. Guy may have only worked 40 hours, but he worked 20 in this code, 20 in that code. And it's a perfect science as far as the audit goes because it happened that week, right? It's not 6 months later. We're coming back saying, hey, what do these hours look?
Yeah, and that's something we've touched on it, I think, in every podcast, policy and procedures, where the PEO kind of reigns supreme for the small business owner, because something like that, there are a set of rules and regulations specifically in the construction industry as well, as far as if you can and can't switch workers' comp codes, what codes you can switch into, what
Right.
codes you can't. Like, I know Florida and roofers is one specific. You're a roofer 100% of the time or not at all.
Exactly.
Even if you're only roofing for a portion of, 2 days a week, you're doing roofing related stuff, and the rest of the time you're doing siding or whatever else. The way the law is set up, you are in that roofing code 100%. And the PEOs are very good at helping with, job descriptions. What are the employees doing when they can and can't switch codes? Like I said, you can find some PEO partners that are very good with that. As far as, okay, we're going to be electricians for X amount of time. You have a specific electrician job that you're going to do, depending on your skill set of your people, because obviously you would want to have specific licenses and everything else to be doing different things that require those licenses. But the PEO is definitely there to help and keep you on track with that and make it as, cost-effective solution as possible,
Right.
because it
And
becomes
another good point is that data that's going in, that may not be just for an audit. That might be because you have a business owner who really, really wants to drill down on how much of my labor is being put on job A, location A, versus location B versus location C. So when they turn in their data, when they turn in their hours, that's what we're going to suggest to them. Turn in your hours to us on how many hours that your employees were at location A, how many were at location B. Yes, it's a total of 40 hours at the end of the week, but now we can give you some reports that breaks down your labor costs by the job. And that's then able to go into their construction side or their bidding process so they know what their true costs on a project is.
Also a very effective way to figure out which teams of employees are working well together. If just say you're doing electrical for new construction, type of thing, and you've got a crew of 3, and they're just doing the base electrical work on, these. Why do these 3 employees do 2 houses, do 1 house per day?
Right.
Why do these 3 employees, when they're together, why do they get half as much work done as the other ones?
Right.
So it can really tell you who works well together, who's smoking lots of cigarettes and hanging out, break time stuff. So another very good benefit of the job costing side of things. So we're talking a lot about audits. Can you go a little bit more detail on what an actual audit is and how that works in
So in the traditional work comp setting, a owner goes in to see his insurance agent. He expresses that I'm going to do, 500,000 in payroll. That's a guess. That's not anything other than that. He really doesn't know. But he's going to do $500,000 in payroll. He's in a $10 code. So, they come back with a $50,000 premium. There's a large portion of that is written a check that day as a deposit, and the balance is broken up over
it could be, I mean,
it could be anything. It could be an 8-month
11
period.
months, 6 months, however you
You know,
want to do it.
They always want to get their money up front. Let's just be honest. Their goal is to get as much money in their pocket as fast as they can to cover potential claims, and at the end of the period, the last 4 months of the period or something along those lines, that's when they knock on your door with an audit. And what they're basically doing at this point is grabbing your payroll records, the amount of time that you've actually used, and measuring what a true number is to how many hours of people work at the work comp rate that they're charging to see whether that $500,000 worth of payroll was real or not. Now, I suppose it can work in both ways where, hey, I only did $400,000 worth of payroll and I've overpaid. Nobody wants to overpay, right?
Mhm.
But what we see is what I tell people is plan on succeeding. Can we just plan on succeeding? Your guess was 500,000, but you did $1 million, right? You grew. So now all of a sudden, 8 months into the year, you've paid your deposit, you've paid your payments, but the audit comes up and they're like, oh, wait a minute, you owe us another $50,000 because you doubled the amount of pay. Now, at that time, they're not saying, hey, you didn't have any losses, so we're going to give you some money back. They're saying, you've paid us the 50,000, you actually ran $1 million worth of payroll, and we're here to collect. And, depending upon cash management or the cash flow, that owner may not be prepared for that extra $50,000. And that's an extra $50,000 he's got to come up with as a payment for the pleasure of moving forward and signing up to go again for another year.
Right.
Which the knowledge is, we're not going to let you say that you're going to do 500,000 the next year. We're going to pretty much guess that you're going to do $1 million.
Hold them to the $1 million, and now they've got
right
the initial. Now they've got a deposit of $25,000.
This is just one of those things that we hear over and over and over where our program is more of a perfect science, a pay as you go program. Okay. Yes, you can guess when you come on board with us that you're going to do $500,000 with payroll. But if after 2 months or 3 months you've hired 10 more people, that's a strong indication you're not going to do exactly what you said. You're doing more. We've planned for the success now. And the week that those people start working, the hours that after they've been turned in, we're charging that extra amount of workers' comp. So there is no 8 months later having to come up with $50,000 more. It's you hired somebody, it's expected that you're going to end up paying the work comp on that person, and you start doing it immediately. And I would assume if somebody's hiring extra people, the revenue is being generated at that time too. In most businesses, that's absolutely true. And that's a help for having the income come in as the cash flow goes.
I got you. So with the PEO, it's going to be a better, you're essentially, it's essentially self-auditing every week
Every week.
with the payroll. But it's not an official process. You're not officially having to do anything. It's turn the payroll hours in, and you're charged to the penny for the amount of work comp that happened on that particular week.
I mean, again, if you have a guy and he hires, an extra crew or whatever, there is that expectation in his head when I'm hiring them that my costs for these employees is going up. For some reason, in the traditional method, they hire these people and they don't have that in the back of their head, and they don't put the money aside always, and it doesn't hit them until 8 months later. And there's two types of entrepreneurs or job cycles, I guess, where 8 months later it hits them and they're just not prepared for it, or they're still on that growth pattern, right? And they are bringing in the money to pay it, but they don't recognize the fact that, oh, my premiums for last year was 50,000. Now at renewal, my premium is going to be $1 million, or $1 million in payroll and 100,000 in premium, and they're just like not keeping up with the growth of their own business. You can do that when you recognize that you're doing the hiring and the costs hits you right at the same time.
This makes it a little bit simpler for them. Let's jump back to master policies and multi-state. How is the PEO leveraging to benefiting the client by offering them a little bit better rate from a work comp point of view? Now that we've got it's on a pay as you go, but they're going in and buying in bulk and then kind of individualizing, looking at each client.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many moving parts, and by having a partner who is insured in every state or the states that they tell us that they're insured in, we already know what the costs are going to be before we bring them on board. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. You know, when I'm bidding a job or somebody's bidding a job in a different state, they don't know what their costs are. So they can go to their PEO partner. They can say, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing a job in Texas, and I'd like to know what my cost per hundred is going to be in Texas. I'm thinking about being there for 6 months, and I'm going to do $1 million worth of payroll while I'm there. Whether I hire Texas local people or travel, those are other questions. But the rate that they're going to be giving them is for that particular state, which includes the state unemployment for Texas, which includes the work comp rate specifically for Texas. And they'll reaffirm that the code that they're using in another state is the exact same code that they should be using in Florida. Sometimes that changes. Most of the time it doesn't. But the amount can vary quite a bit. And being prepared for that is very important.
And beneficial on the PEO side, because essentially the whole conversation we just had about how an audit happens and whatever, how we go through the audit process.
Yeah.
Now you have a client that goes and just has a job just for Texas or just for Georgia and has to go get a whole separate policy that now becomes its own separate audit. They had to project for this one particular job, whatever it is. And now you've got the same process of this audit but now you have to do it twice, one for each state that you're in.
In the PEO model, there is no change whatsoever from audit perspective because there is no audit. It's literally being done each individual week as you turn in the hours.
All right. Well, I think that's it for this week's episode of the PEO Playbook. Thank you all for joining us and finding out a little bit more about PEO and the work comp aspects we talked about today.
Thanks for tuning in to the PEO Playbook, where we help business owners unlock the power of PEOs and take their team to the next level. This episode was proudly brought to you by Legacy Sales Engineering. If you're ready to simplify HR, scale your business, and put the right team behind you, visit staffbroker.net to get started with Staff Brokers today.